So this movie is so bad, but it's also so good. And by that, I don't mean so bad it's good. I generally don't like that term. I think that's just us needing to preface that B movies we love are technically bad even though we love them, when in actuality, lots of B movies are just good. No, what I mean is this movie is half bad and half pretty darn good. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Cobwebs, everyone. My name is Daniel, and today I'm continuing my review series on the anthology horror films made by Amicus, a production company started up by Milton Schabotsky and Max Rosenberg in the 1960s. This is the second one they made, Torture Garden, from 1967, directed by Freddie Francis and written by Robert Bloch, the writer of the original novel, Psycho. This is a film with several scary stories, none of which have anything to do with torture or gardens. So much like this movie, we have to start off by talking about the wraparound. Now, right at the beginning of this movie, it kind of has me because it opens up at a carnival. Lots of carnival rides, Ferris wheels, all stuff like that. And I love that kind of atmosphere in a movie, especially a horror movie. Give me a spooky carnival in a film and I will be happy. But we follow a few people who end up getting called into a mysterious tent by Dr. Diabolo, played by Burgess Meredith. And it becomes clear that Burgess Meredith, as Dr. Diabolo, is going to become our host for all the scary stories that we're going to hear in this film. He brings these people in with the promise that they will experience horrors. But I like how he words it. Not just that he's going to reveal to them their future, which is what we heard in the last anthology film, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, but that he will reveal the evil that is in their hearts. Now that's interesting to me because a lot of Amicus anthology segments, they tend to be about a character getting some kind of a comeuppance, right? A character who does something wrong and some poetic justice is served to them at the end. And this movie is very upfront about that thesis statement, that the evil in the hearts of all of these people is going to be revealed through these horror stories that tell their future. But the revealer of this future is a figure who looks very much like a typical fortune teller, but is a mannequin, a statue, which I think is a weird choice. Yeah, Dr. Diabolo is not going to tell them their actual future. He's not going to be the vessel that these stories are going to come from. It's this mannequin that he owns, a woman with garden shears. It's very odd. But the first main character of a story turns out to be Michael Bryant as Colin Williams, and the first story is called Enoch. So our main guy, Colin, turns out to be a lazy, do-nothing guy who won't get a job and won't get his life together, but he's going to visit his uncle who is dying, his rich uncle, which is very important. He goes to ask his uncle for some money, but all his uncle wants to tell him is that he needs to get his life together. But the uncle's heart condition starts flaring up. He says he needs his medicine. And like any lazy, do-nothing guy who won't get a job and has lots of debts would do, he withholds the medicine until the uncle will tell him where his money is, but the uncle just ends up dying. So the thesis statement of this being about revealing the evil in everyone's hearts is very much coming to fruition so far, because already the guy has killed his own family. With his uncle out of the way, he goes around searching the house, trying to find where this uncle's money is stored away. He ends up finding a secret basement, goes down there and digs until he reaches a coffin. For some reason, he does not assume that this coffin is probably holding a dead body that got buried down there. No. He assumes there's probably money in there. So he opens it up. He finds a cat, a living cat that just jumps on out and runs on off. Very, very surprising thing to find in a coffin. You just know that cat's got to be spooky and supernatural, right? This cottage, this house that he's in, used to be owned by a witch. And he finds out that this cat is the spirit of the witch's spiritual, demonic, familiar, or whatever. And the cat is going to mentally torture him into doing whatever the cat wants. So while Colin Williams is getting this whole story telepathically communicated to him by a fortune teller mannequin, within it, he's also getting telepathically communicated with a cat. It's a very weird day for Colin. Do I like this story? No, not really. I'm not a big fan of spooky cat stories, and there's a surprising amount of them throughout the horror genre. Lots of spooky cat movies. They pretty much never work for me. I'm a cat person. We have 2 cats at home. Cats are great. When a cat walks in, I just don't feel scared. But what does this spooky cat want Colin to do? Well, kill people, of course. And if he doesn't kill people, the cat basically mentally scratching and clawing like inside his brain. I guess that's torture. That's the closest to torture Garden is going to get. And I think the very idea of having a horror anthology segment about a guy who literally becomes the killer of the story is a pretty good idea. And there are some kind of bloody, gory shots in this, but the segment is just boring. The reality of watching it is you're gonna watch Colin wander around this house for a long time, kind of looking for this cat in silence. And considering that this is about a spooky small creature giving him a bunch of gold coins in exchange for doing things, I feel like this should just be a Leprechaun story, right? Just make it a Leprechaun and be way better. The story ends with some poetic justice, as you would expect, and we go back to the wraparound, and Colin's reaction to this entire vision is basically, oh, it's definitely an illusion, whatever, that's just a little trick. That's mostly all of their reactions to these visions, which is kind of disappointing that we as the audience are expected to be really affected by these stories, to be scared, to be maybe emotionally moved, and the characters just don't seem to really care about the stories at all. That aside, let's go into the second segment, which is called Terror Over Hollywood. So this one stars Beverly Adams, who was a model, a beauty contestant, and she was actually in a few Elvis movies, as Carla Hayes, an American character, interesting for this movie. She is living in Hollywood. She is trying to become a big star. She's trying to find her breakout. Her roommate actually does get a big break, and that she gets to go out to dinner with a big film producer. And right away, much like the last segment, the evil of the main character is revealed. A very just vindictive, petty evil where she purposely destroys her roommate's dress so she can't go out on this date so she can then proxy him.
Oh no, dear. Oh, Carla, please do something. Make some excuse.
Now, listen, don't worry. I'll handle it.
She does meet and flirt with a big star named Bruce Benton, who's basically supposed to be an Errol Flynn or Cary Grant type classic movie star, except with maybe 2% of the charisma. That might actually be generous. But it turns out Bruce is involved with some criminals, right? And Carla watches him get shot in the head by these guys, but he's rushed to a special clinic with a special doctor and gets fixed right up. Turns out he's fine. Carla is pretty suspicious about this, but gets kind of the runaround on what's really going on until the secret of his resurrection gets revealed. And before you get too excited, like this is going to be something really cool, spooky, cultish, I normally don't spoil the twists of these segments, but look, it's robots, it's androids, and the movie has some really obvious social commentary, I guess. Oh, how do you think the Hollywood stars are able to stay beautiful and on the screen for so long? They're actually androids. Get it? It is not cool. It's not interesting. It's entirely delivered through exposition.
The immortals of the screen. Now you know the secret.
The coolest thing you get to see in this movie is just Bruce's face gets scratched and you kind of see some metal under there. Not enough. Like, not enough. If you're going to have a story that's this lame and obvious, then you need to give us some kind of cool robot visuals of some kind. Being the 1960s is not an excuse. There's some cool robots like back in 1950s movies. So the segment is pretty boring, uninteresting, and exists to deliver a twist that sucks. We go back to the wraparound and Carla also just kind of shrugs off this vision. Who cares? And we go into segment 3, which is called Mr. Steinway. So this one stars Barbara Ewing, who I know and love as Xena from Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. One of my favorite movies of all time, one of my favorite Hammer horror films of all time. Love to see her in this movie. And she's playing a character named Dorothy Endicott, who meets and quickly falls in love with a young, socially awkward concert pianist. So right off the bat, the movie is trying to draw you in on a love story. And I gotta say, for me, it very much worked. Like right off the start, I can tell, okay, I've been suffered through a couple of pretty bad segments in this, but I'm kind of in on this segment right away. This concert pianist is a genius, a star in his field, but he's just awkward.
You're quite a lonely person, aren't you?
What makes you say that?
This habit you have of talking to yourself.
I tend to like love stories that are about a guy who's not a loser, not like not like an Encino Man kind of a situation, but a good guy who's just kind of awkward and falls in love with a beautiful girl and they have a cute romance. And that's what this very much gives me. It establishes it very quickly, very little screen time, but it's effective for me. However, this is a horror movie. This can't all be sunshine and rainbows. And Dorothy comes to find that perhaps her lover's piano is sentient and does not like having a rival. Yes, this is about a jealous, haunted piano, and it's really like a Christine situation. But like in John Carpenter's Christine, where the car doesn't seem to be possessed by any kind of a spirit, but is just sentient and loves her male owner and is very jealous of any woman that may come between them. That's what this is. And you have to ask the question, okay, these segments are all about revealing the evil that is within the characters' hearts, and Dorothy doesn't seem to be evil. Well, I agree she's not, but the movie hints a little bit that one of the reasons the piano is angry at her is she's a little too controlling of the pianist. She's too much dominating his time, not letting him have time to his career. And for a while, the segment felt ambiguous of whether that was true, but it does seem to be towards the end when she tells him, hey, I talked to your manager, I canceled your tour, we're gonna go away together. And he's like, do I have to?
Either we go away together, or I'll go by myself.
In that case, I have no choice.
So she does seem to be controlling. Evil, no, she doesn't compare to the first two characters at all. I actually love this segment. I can understand people thinking maybe it's a little bit too low-key, not enough happens, but it's got an emotional core I care about, some eerie sequences, and I really like the ending. Now let's roll right into segment 4, the grand finale, and by far the most star-studded of all of these segments. And that is The Man Who Collected Poe, which follows Ronald Wyatt, played by Jack Palance. Yes, we got Jack Palance in here, and so good to see him. And he sinks his teeth into this role. He's so hammy, but in such a fun way. He plays an obsessive Edgar Allan Poe fan and collector. The segment starts off with him visiting and getting to admire the collection of the greatest Poe collector in the world, who is played by Peter Cushing. Yes, you were wondering if we were finally gonna get Peter Cushing in this movie. We got him, folks. It is so much fun to watch Jack Palance just fawning over all of this Edgar Allan Poe memorabilia, early manuscripts, antiques, possessions of his. I mean, honestly, it reminds me of what everyone acts like when they come over to my house and look at my Blu-ray collection. Oh, okay, that's not true. They don't care. Peter Cushing invites him to come to America and visit his house where he's got his full collection. Jack Palance does it right away. And here we get to watch the two of them get drunk together and just nerd out over Edgar Allan Poe.
Let us drink to the immortal Edgar Allan Poe.
It is so much fun. This is the only segment of the bunch that's going for comedy, but it's gold because of the star power of these two actors, Peter Cushing and Jack Palance. Oh my God, they're so much fun together. Just watching them geek out over gothic horror is a blast. And also the fact that this is Jack Palance's character makes sense because of all of the characters that are in the wraparound story. He's the one that's the most lighthearted about everything, who's just kind of standing back, chuckling at all the spooky stuff. He's the horror fan, right? He's me when I go to a haunted house attraction in October, where I'm not like screaming and cowering. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all this spooky Halloween-y stuff. I just love it all so much. That's Jack Palance through this whole movie. But things get spooky and supernatural, and Peter Cushing takes him down to the crypt of his house where the real Poe collectibles are. And I'm not going to spoil where it goes. It's awesome. It's so satisfying. It's such a great finale to this movie, and you just got to see it for yourself. Watch it. Then we go back to the wraparound, and one thing about this movie I didn't even mention is one of the people in the room is Michael Ripper. It's kind of disappointing that Michael Ripper didn't actually get a story for himself, but he does get a moment at the end that's kind of fun. But at the end, everybody just goes home. So the ending doesn't pack the punch like in Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. It just kind of fades out, and we get a final reveal of what Dr. Diabolo actually is. Oh my gosh, his name is Dr. Diabolo. Can you possibly guess?
As the devil incarnate.
Burgess Meredith in this movie, I haven't really talked about him. He's okay for me. He doesn't even compare to Peter Cushing as Dr. Terror in the last Anthology. He very much just feels like he's just trying to be big and hammy and, ooh, I'm a spooky guy. But it doesn't feel like he really put in the work to create a full character the way Peter Cushing did with Dr. Terror. Let's go ahead and rate this movie. So for segment 1, Enoch with the spooky cat, I'm gonna give it a 4. Like, I don't know, like it starts out pretty good, and honestly as high as a score as it gets is really because I like the setup and I like some of the bloody kills, but everything else is pretty boring. I'm not into the spooky cat thing. Segment 2, Terror Over Hollywood, I'm gonna give it a 3. I think it stinks. Like, it's not 100% garbage because it still looks like an Amicus movie from the 60s, and the character goes to a very beautiful club, and any kind of like Hollywood club in the 60s, that's somewhere that I wanna go, but I don't think anything else about this works. The lead actress, she's not even very good, and all of the horror is just delivered through exposition. You don't even get to see see anything good here. But let's jump way up and give a 7 to Mr. Steinway. I really like this one. Like I said, I can understand if people think it's a little bit too low key, maybe boring, but the emotional hook works for me. I like the love story. I like the eeriness. I like that the piano reminds me of Christine, because can you tell I love John Carpenter's Christine? Anything that's going to remind me of that is probably going to be better in my book, and has a really good finale. And The Man Who Collected Poe gets an 8. This is actually one of my favorite Amicus anthologies. It's too bad it's put into a movie that is so uneven, but it's so funny and fun with Jack Palance and Peter Cushing, and the Poe atmosphere, especially towards the end, is palpable. It's beautiful. I love it so much. Now, does it have any intensity or scariness to it? You know, not really. That's why I'm gonna hold it back a little bit, but I love it. The wraparound, I'm gonna give a 4. I think Burgess Meredith is fine, but I don't know why they chose to make the deliverer of the fortunes a mannequin. The surroundings around them are pretty drab, and I don't really like the way it ends. I think you could easily argue that I should give this movie a 5 out of 10, but I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 because I'm a big fan of the last 2 segments. But enough about my thoughts. Let me know yours down in the comments below. Tell me what you think about Torture Garden, and if you missed my last Amicus review, I'm gonna link it right here, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, as well as my list of spooky ranking lists. I've got a lot of ranking lists, even one I did recently, top 20 1940s horror, so you can check those out as well if you want to stick around the channel. Give a like if you enjoyed this, subscribe for more videos like this if you haven't yet. Thank you so much for watching. With all that said, don't forget to enjoy yourself today, have some fun, and I'll see you next time.